Hey, have you heard the news? It's awesome. Decimals have common denominators too. That's right. Here's what I mean. Imagine you're taking a test and you have some decimals and you got to figure out how to add them, like this. Now I know you probably already have the answer in your head, but I'm just using this easy example to show a point. Well, let's think back to fractions. Think of fractions. What allows us to add and subtract fractions? Well, when we come up with a common denominator, a number that's the same on the bottom, I'm going to use the little giant 1 strategy real quick here. I end up with 5/10 plus 2/10 equals 7/10, right? Having the 10 on the bottom allows us to just basically do a very simple addition problem. 5 plus 2 equals 7. Okay, very easy. We can do the same thing with decimals. Here's how. We're going to see the problem some people have with decimals with different numbers of decimal places is, lining them up or adding without being able to use a calculator. Here we have 2 decimal places. Here we only have 1. Sometimes that can be confusing. How do we fix it? Add decimal places. Add a place value, right? Some might call it a placeholder. Okay, this pen is toast. Luckily I have another one ready. So it changes this problem to this. Now you can add zeros anytime you want to. There's no problem with it. It doesn't really change what this decimal represents. Okay? But now, what I have here, if you say it correctly, you say 3/100, right? That's how you say that first decimal. And if you just write what you say, what do you have? You have a fraction, 3/100. And then if you say the second one correctly, that's 20/100. And that's easy to do, right? We just did it over here with 5 plus 2 equals 7. Here it's 20 plus 3 equals 23. Hundredths. And then we can just change it back to a decimal. How many decimal places? Well, it's how many zeros? The number of zeros. So since we have 2 zeros, it's 2 decimal places with that answer there, right? So that gets us from a decimal into a common denominator situation. Okay? So instead of a common denominator with a fraction, it's really a common decimal place. Common place value. What does common place value really mean? Well, it really means common denominator. So decimals have common denominators. Whoo! Well, if you don't think that's very cool, let me give you a few examples and show you how this could help you out. Okay, so here we are. Pretend you're taking a test. So here's our situation. It's a test, and the test says no calculators. Scary. Here's a few problems. There's an easy one. Here's another one that's got a negative value in it. Let me throw another one down here. When I'm done writing these, I just want you to pause the video and do these problems using the common place value technique. There. Do those 4 problems with no calculator. Come back in a second and we'll check your work. Bye. Okay, welcome back. we're going to change these so they have common denominators. How can these have common denominators? They're decimals. Well, we talked about that in the first few minutes of the video, and here's how that works. I'm going to use the greatest number of decimal places I see. So since this one has 3, I need 3 over here to make this a simpler problem. Now, if you want to, you could line it up, right? You could put it over here and just line up the columns. Super easy, right? If you say that correctly, it's 442 thousandths. How do you know the place value? How do you know how to say it correctly? Well, you count the zeros, or you count the places. There's 1, 2, 3 places. Then you do that many zeros. And put a 1. So in this case, it's 442 thousandths. Okay, you can do that anytime with any decimal. Count the number of places, give it that many zeros, put a 1 in front. That tells you what the place value is. Next problem. We've got 2 decimal places. I'm going to have 2 other decimal places. I'm going to add a 0 to the 6. If you want to, you could rearrange. There's no problem in rearranging these. And then do it without the decimals, right? Get rid of the decimals. What's 60 take away 5? 55. Then put the decimal back. Just maintain 2 decimal places. Okay? So you can get rid of the decimal just like when we're adding and subtracting fractions. You get a common denominator, you really get rid of the denominator, and then you put it back later. Here we go. Another one. 2 decimal places, so I'm going to add a 0 there, right? Now this one we could break apart into, let's take the whole numbers, 3 minus 1 is 2, and then we could do the decimals separately, and by doing it this way, it gets rid of the decimals. We don't have decimals now. What's 20 minus 2? 18. Then put the decimal back. Take it out. Separate the whole numbers from the fractions, the decimals over here, and then put it back. And finally, one more. 4 take away 2 7/100. Well, I want to create hundredths place here. That's how I get the common denominator of the decimal. Okay, then we're going to separate these. I'm going to take the 4 minus 2, makes 2. But look at this. I've got a double 0, take away 7. Huh. Well, that's negative 7/100, right? So I just add my 2 decimal places over here. What's 200 take away 7? 193. How many decimal places? 2. Okay. What is 200 minus 7? Okay. So I ask a question, I give the answer, and then I maintain the same number of decimal places. Okay, that's all for that. Just a thought I had during class today. No calculators, no problem. Make a common denominator